Hey, it's the Empire, Geobox Empire, Boxer Boxing. Now, man, wild news from Eddie Hearn. Now, he basically talks about how in Belgium, apparently there's going to be some fights happening, and apparently the government has some new regulations during this pandemic. Now, I'm going to quote a Twitter post for you from Eddie Hearn, and he says, and I quote, "We have government approval for elite athletes. Exemption for White, Povetkin, Taylor, and Pearson. Subject to extensive testing." So basically, they're not going to be getting tested for this fight. They're exempt from this test. And this is wild stuff. Now, I talked about before how all this testing may have been pretty easy to administer pre-COVID-19. But now that the pandemic happened, a lot of places are closed because their operating costs doesn't make sense for them to open up, right? It costs too much money for them to be opening up, so they're gonna keep their offices closed until more people can be outside. Now, in the case of VADA, Eddie Hearn basically got a government okay to not get these fighters tested, and the fight must continue, right? And it's wild, man. People are commenting underneath it, talking about how, this one guy says, Elite Athletic Commission, check. TUI exemption, check. VADA UCOD testing exemption, check. And people were like, the show must go on, things like that. And it's wild, man. I knew this was gonna happen. Now, now Povetkin and White can be on a clear. They can be on, they can be on juice. They can be whatever. They can be on wherever they want, and no one's gonna touch them because people don't have the wherewithal, and things aren't opened up as they are to be traveling and test these fighters, right? UCOD and VADA, at least VADA is a random drug testing, so you have a guy just come out of nowhere and he'll just drug test you, and that requires a lot of travel, and when you're traveling a lot of different countries, you're more likely to get COVID-19, right? So this is not a shock to me, man. I talked about this before. So we're going to see how this whole thing happens, man. I'm going to be honest with you. I've seen Povetkin on drugs before. I've seen it. And people were talking about it, and that was a big rumor for a while. And I know he was on drugs because there's some fights where this guy has like an 8-pack and he's like jacked. He looks like Anthony Joshua. But, it's basically like you took Anthony Joshua's body when he was lifting weights and you stuck Povetkin's head on it. That's how swole Povetkin was at one point. And that Povetkin, he's basically, you can't really beat him. And if DILLIAN WHYTE fights Alexander Povetkin, he's going to lose that fight. So this is actually bad news for Eddie Hearn. He's pitting DILLIAN WHYTE in a situation where if DILLIAN WHYTE happens to fight Alexander Povetkin, he's going to lose that fight. And it's probably going to be by knockout. DILLIAN WHYTE, he didn't look good to his last fight, and he was dropped by Oscar Rivas. That was a shocker to everyone. Oscar Rivas hasn't really fought too many elite level fighters, at least known at high level. And, we're going to see how this whole thing unfolds. But anyway, man, let me know how you guys feel about it, though. Like, comment, subscribe. This is the Empire. Geoboxing Empire. Peace.